Welcome to the Steady On Stronger Together podcast. I am your host, Angie Ballman. Today, my guest is the delightful Hanna C Howard. She joined me during the launch week for her first young adult fantasy novel, Ignite the Sun. As we talk about the book's heroine's quest for sunlight in persistent darkness, we will also hear about Hanna's journey through grief, anxiety, and depression. Her story is powerfully encouraging as she shares with all of us how to rise in light and defeat the dark. Let's listen in. Hey, Steady On friends. Welcome to this week's Stronger Together conversation. It is my privilege to welcome Hanna C Howard. How are you doing, Hanna? This week, her first book. Here, I'm going to hold it up real quick because I got it. Mine came yesterday, I think.
Yay!
Yay! Is it so exciting to hold them in your hand?
It is so exciting.
I'm so excited for you. This is her first novel, and this is launch week. It just launched on Tuesday, right? So talk to us a little bit about how it's going. How has your week been?
Yeah, it's been kind of crazy. As you can see behind me, I have some sort of sun decorations that were part of launch day and my virtual launch event. So it's been strange to, well, not that I know any differently, but strange to launch a book in times of pandemic.
Yes.
We well, the book came out on Tuesday, and then on Wednesday, I had a virtual launch event through a local indie store.
Okay.
And it's just been, a lot of online stuff, but really good. So
good. I have worked with a few. I love serving on launch teams. I'm on 3 right now, actually. And I've worked with several authors since like mid-March when, and it's just so different for them. And I know we talked about this earlier, but I just, from what I write Bible studies, not novels, but still, when you put your heart and soul into something and then you're brave enough to let the world see it, it's not just the project, it's your story too of the project, right? And so my hope for you and for others is that even though it is different right now, that it can still be just really affirming and good. So I hope I hope what you've been experiencing this. Oh, Pam is already saying hi, Hanna. Hi, Pam. It's good to see you on. I hope this week it just is and continues to be just really affirming to you, because this is such a celebration of accomplishment. So I got ahead of myself a little bit, but Hanna's here from the Tulsa, Oklahoma area, right? Indeed. And wife to Dan and mom to Edmund. How old is Edmund?
He was 5 months on Tuesday.
Oh my gosh, he's a little bitty thing. I didn't realize he was that young. Wow.
Yeah. Yes. The day Tulsa went into quarantine lockdown. So his life has been spent entirely in pandemic so far.
Oh my word. Well, I guess, there you go, right? Yeah. Now, was your husband able to be with you when you had the baby?
Thankfully, Okay. I actually was induced that day so that we wouldn't have to risk any more shutdowns.
Mm-hmm.
So good. He was the only one who could be with me in the hospital at the time, but he was there.
And now Lisa Wood is saying hi. I think she's in between planes. I remember her telling me this before. She's like on a layover or something. And so she says she's watching for a minute. She'll finish later and she's excited to read your book. I don't know if Lisa has it yet or not, but I'm showing off again. I have one.
Hey.
So it's awesome. So, okay. And you are also, because we talk about Enneagrams a little bit on the page, you're an Enneagram 4 wing 5. And I know I told you I'm a 1 wing 2. And so we're just delighted to have you here and do our part to celebrate this with you, Hanna.
Thank you so much.
So let's just talk a little bit tell me about kind of the heart of the book and also the title, like what, why title and kind of what does it say about the heart of the story?
Yeah, of course. So this title actually is the third one that this book has had. For most of its life, it was called Sunchild. Which if I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but if you read the book, it ends up having a lot to do with this sort of mythical race that I invented called Sun Children. And so that was the original title. It had that title for most of its life, which was, almost 10 years now. And so then when my agent and I took it on submission to editors, she sort of felt like the child word would be a bit of a turnoff to teenagers who maybe would associate that with, kid stuff. And so we looked for something else and ended up selling it as something like the sun. which it then got another name after I found my publisher and we settled on Ignite the Sun. So I'll talk mostly about that title. The book, Short Pitch, is about a girl who lives in this land that's been dark her whole life. She's never seen the sun.
Syria, is that how you say her name?
Syria.
Yeah. Okay, I just wanted to make sure. Yeah, it's pretty. Yeah. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
And so she discovers that sort of early on that she has this elemental power that connects her to the sun, and the book is about her journey to bring it back to the world that she lives in that's dark. And so to ignite the sun, it has a very literal meaning for the book, because bringing it back, it's sort of an ignition of sorts. But I think you could, there's a lot of layers of light and dark metaphor that you could find or bring to the book, depending on what you think about metaphor in books. But I think for Syria herself, there's definitely levels of personal ignition that come with her character and the kind of luminescence that she brings. So
I love the title and the concept. I do. And as a person of faith, I think there's such a richness in just this idea that the sun and the light is such an important part of our life. And I think probably all of us can relate to the dark places in our life, whether events or seasons. And what we most want is peace and light and and I think that a lot of us could probably talk about our own journey to finding that and receiving that, or accepting it or rejecting it. Right. It's just, it's so rich. So I love it. I'm fascinated by it. I'm excited to get into it. So you describe your writing as young adult fantasy with a classic bent. And fantasy is probably the least thing that I move towards, right? Like, it's so funny. I'm in a book club I'm in two book clubs. One, I pick the books, and one, I don't pick the books. And one of the reasons that I'm in a book club that I don't pick the books is because I read things I wouldn't gravitate towards, right? And it's good for me. I think it's good for us to read things that we don't. So I would just confess, like, this is not like my go-to genre. Absolutely. But talk to me a little bit. What does it mean? Like fantasy with a classic bent. What does that mean for you?
Yeah. So I think if you're not working in the current young adult fantasy industry, you may not know this, but right now there's a really big sort of push for / desire for fantasy that pushes the boundaries of fantasy.
Okay.
That does it differently, that takes it sort of from a different place of mythology or folklore than is traditional. Traditional, I would say, has come from people like J.R.R. Tolkien and C.S. Lewis, whose fantasy was deeply rooted in Western mythology and folklore, or in Tolkien's case, Norse mythology and folklore.
Okay.
And that's really where the fantasy genre, as we know it today, grew from, is those sort of Western mythologies. And right now, it's wonderful. It's diversifying, but we're seeing a lot more fantasy that's rooted in other cultures beyond the sort of European one that we're really familiar with. But because a lot of my kind of growing up with fantasy was rooted in the classical Western tradition of fantasy, that ended up being kind of, with this book, what I wanted to write.
Sure.
So that's what I mean by classic.
Gotcha. I liked there's a comment at the very beginning that I saw just earlier today, and I thought it was interesting to me. She talks about a lyrical fairy tale that feels, I like this, at once familiar and fresh. I think that's high praise.
Yeah.
To read, I think this is Joanna Ruth Meyer's comment in the beginning. And I think what she's saying is, if you like this genre, you'll pick it up and feel at home, but you'll also find something new. Right. And I think that's very high praise. I love it. So one of the things that I know we do have in common is love for the Lucy Maud Montgomery, right? Yeah. For some reason, I was like, wait, is that right? Character Anne Shirley. And I was so I'm on this Facebook group. It's called, I think it's Avid Readers of Christian Fiction. And one of the ladies who's written a lot of books was just over the summer saying, okay, I've never read these, Anne of Green Gables. I don't know anything about it. And I'm like, I wanted to be like, how could you be an author and not know Anne Shirley? Like it's I was just appalled, but good for you that you found her, right? She's been a favorite of mine since I was young, really young. And so what about her moves you? What about her is just what draws you to her character and her life?
Well, actually, I've got over here on my wall, one of them's kind of coming off. I have some portraits that I've painted at various points for of my favorite heroines, and Anne is second from the bottom there.
Love it. I see her. Yep.
Yeah. And I connected with her so much as a young woman. I think I came to them in high school. And first of all, she's a mess at the beginning, at least, and really throughout, but she's such a mess at the beginning. And she means well at the same time. And I identified with that and still identify with that so much that, you know, I was always a klutz. I was always kind of someone who got myself into pickles without really knowing that I was going to, you know, that I was doing something dumb or doing something silly or whatever. And that is so much of who Anne is to begin with. But she's also, and this is kind of what gets her into trouble, she's a daydreamer. She's a, you know, head in the clouds, idealist. I think she's probably an Enneagram 4. She, you know, she just, and I'd have to work on that more. But
that's fun. I love trying to guess who people
I know.
I do the same thing with Bible characters. I confess.
Yeah. But I think I relate a lot to her, and her tendency to see this like gleaming, shining ideal in what she wants to be, and the place that she lives and the people that she encounters. And then that, like, for her early on, perpetual crushing disappointment when something doesn't live up to what she wants it to be, was really how I operated for a long time. So she's just such a familiar person, you know. She feels So.
And her hair is red.
And her hair is red.
And that doesn't hurt either, right? So can I ask, who are the other 3 ladies on your wall that you have drawn? Will you tell us? Let's see if I know them. Yeah, I'd love to know.
The first one up there is Ginny Weasley.
No, I don't know who that is.
From Harry Potter.
Okay. And see, no, my boys have read Harry Potter. They love him, but yes, they love that series, but I have not. That's because I confess that's not right. Yeah. Okay. Good. Yep.
Well, most of them, no, just those 2 are fantasy. The second one down is Gabriel from Garth Nick's Old Kingdom books.
Okay.
Third one is Anne, and then the last one is Elizabeth Bennet from.
Oh yes, I do know Elizabeth Bennet.
Yeah.
That's more my genre, right?
Yeah. For sure.
I love that. Okay, so I'm going to put you on the spot. I think you'll know this quote, right? Yeah. But if you had to choose, would you choose divinely beautiful? Do you know where I'm going? Or dazzlingly clever, or angelically good? Do you remember that quote from is it the Anne of Green Gables, where Anne asks, if you could choose, would you choose divinely beautiful, dazzlingly clever, or angelically good?
I would, see.
So hard, isn't it?
It is hard. I think the right answer is divinely good. But I would probably choose the clever one. I know.
I'm the same way. I'm like, I think my answer should be good, but I think I want to be clever.
I would rather be clever.
Funny. Okay, well, let's talk just a little bit about like your author story.
Yeah.
First of all, when did you know you wanted to write? And secondly, when did you start calling yourself a writer? I want to know those things. Yeah.
So, well, I've enjoyed writing for really as long as I can remember. In 4th grade, I had a teacher who had this wonderful bookmaking station in one corner of her classroom, and there was, you know, rubber cement, and there was a laminator, and there was fabric to make a kind of, you know, bound book. And I spent so much time at that station. And at the end of the year, my teacher told me, you know, Hannah, you should probably consider being a writer when you grow up. And at the time I was like, that's the most boring idea ever. Why would I want to do that? And then, so I kind of dismissed it as much as a fourth grader can dismiss an idea for a career. And then in 10th grade, I had just learned to drive, and my best friend and I were in her car outside of her house. We'd done something, I don't know what, and we're doing that teenage thing where you delay going inside and going to bed because you would rather just be up late. And so we were chatting, and I think I was telling her that every night before bed, I tell myself stories. Like, I have a running story that I'm always kind of working on. And as I go to bed, I add to it. And she's like, have you ever tried writing them down? And I was sort of like, no, why would I? Like, wouldn't that be a lot of work? And I would probably be bad at it, et cetera, et cetera. And she was like, well, why don't you just try it? I think it'd be worth trying. And so she, for my birthday that year, got me this big, like, legal sized blue journal, and it was just blank pages. And she said, I want you to write down your stories. And so I did. I started writing a book that year. The story I had been telling myself, I started writing into a book. And it was terrible. I hope no one ever sees it, but I loved it. I loved writing it. I used to sit at the back of class in high school with a notebook and a pencil, and I just had a running notebook going of the story. And then I would go home and transcribe it onto my computer. And it was just always in my mind. It was always what I was like sort of obsessed with doing. So 10th grade is when I started feeling seriously that this was something I loved. And then when it came time to go to college, I went to Oklahoma Baptist University in Shawnee, Oklahoma, over John Brown University in Siloam Springs, because OBU had a creative writing program, and KBU didn't. So I studied creative writing in English in college, and then started pursuing publication after college. So that's been a 12-year journey. So if you are trying to be a writer, don't be discouraged, because it takes a long time to get places. But
yes, it does.
I didn't start claiming author or writer as anything to do with my profession until I sold the book, actually.
Really?
This December. My husband used to kind of, roll his eyes, because he would be the one to add anytime we were meeting someone new.
Yes.
And she's a writer.
Right.
Because I just didn't feel like I could claim it yet. But that was more probably insecurity than anything else.
I think it is. I'm in a writers group, and it's really interesting because the ladies that like kind of lead the group, that's one of the questions they ask all the time. Like, are you wearing the writer name tag? Yeah. And if you're not, why not? And one of the things that I had to tell myself or learn myself, I guess, is because I thought a writer was a household name. I thought if you're not John Grisham, if you're not Stephen King, if you're not these names that everybody knows, those are authors, right? That's what it means. And it really was like, it was insecurity and pride at the same time, right? Like, insecurity is the flip side of pride, and I'm like, well, I'm not going to tell anybody I do it until I feel successful. And the reality is, so much of what inspires me, moves me, helps me grow is written by people who are not household names. And am I willing to do the work that I'm called to do?
For sure.
And not, so I don't know. I think it's really challenging. And the last time even we were talking about it, I'm like, I put that name tag on, and then sometimes I take it off because it's not a day that I feel like I can own it. So I really appreciate your honesty around that and your encouragement, because I think there are a lot of people who really do have a story that's definitely worth sharing, but because it's a maybe laborious process, both the writing, the editing, and the industry can be very difficult. They're not able to overcome some of those things and get their story out. So I say that I echo Hannah's encouragement. Keep at it, like whatever at it means for you. Right. So what part of the writing journey has been easy for you? What has come, like, obviously you've not been short on story, right? So that part, but what else, what has come easy for you during this period?
I think for the most part, the love of it has come easy. There haven't been a lot of times that I found it a chore, which is really a blessing, because this particular book has been, I started writing it almost exactly 10 years ago.
That's a long time.
Yeah, at least one draft a year, or one revision a year. And I think the fact that I can read it and not hate it, and actually, like, I still love it. The last revision I did, I was like, I love this book.
Yeah.
So I think that's just a huge blessing. And I would say that's been easy. I think the hard things, and it's hard for me to think beyond this book because it has taken so long, and I haven't made serious progress on anything else during that time because it's been sort of an all-consuming thing for me. But I think the hardest stuff has been the really intense revisions that I did after I signed with my agent. And they've been, I mean, they were wonderful and necessary, but like mind-bending work that has, I think it's like Jedi mind skills, kind of like trying to keep things steady inside your head, keep things straight, keep yourself organized. That stuff has been the hardest. And for me, you know, a lot of that is like, is this still in the book? Am I remembering this from a previous draft? You know, having those like layers of the story that are all still inside your head, but are not necessarily what's on the page. That's been the hardest for me.
I was talking to, I don't think I said this to you when we were talking earlier, but I was talking to another person that I know that writes, and I said one of the things that I've struggled with, maybe I did tell you this when we were on the phone earlier, but it when I'm trying to do a bigger project is because I've written sermons for so long. I think we were talking about that, right? And I've written like short studies, and I write to speak. You know, all the time. Yeah. And so you write it and let it go. You just write it and let it go. And you're on to the next thing. You're on to the next thing. And revisions are painful. And I'm actually pretty bad at it because I kind of just write it. And I'm like, that's good. Let's go, you know? And then somebody looks at it and be like, well, you might think about this or that. I'm like, oh, that's over. I'm done with that. Like, I need to move on, you know, and to like sit with something for a long time and continue to edit it and make hard cuts, because I would bet through this process, there are people that were in the story at the beginning that aren't even in there now, or you know, whole scenes or whatever, right? And letting that go, because not everything that gets cut is cut because it's bad, right? You know, it's cut in part because you're trying to keep that story tight, or you have to keep it to this many pages, whatever, you know. And I think that's hard. I think that's hard work. So talk to me a little bit about some of your personal struggles over the last few years that I know that you're willing to share some of that. I've read some of your blogs, and some of your openness about that is just beautiful. Talk to us a little bit about that part of the struggle, if you will.
So actually the year that I started writing this book, which was 2011, well, it was January of 2011. The November prior to that, I remember the day, it was November 1st. I had my very first panic attack. And I didn't know what it was. I thought I was dying. And
how old were you then? About
I'm 34 now, and so that was I was probably 24.
Okay, yeah, go ahead. Sorry, just curious.
No, good question. And so I obviously, you know, investigated. Called my mom right away. I was in my closet, I think, on the floor because I thought I was dying. And so we figured out that it had been a panic attack. And then from there, it was like a switch had flipped. And I was like all of a sudden dealing with this really bad anxiety, some depression. Then I think the depression kind of came alongside it more gradually, but seasonal affective disorder as well. And I think it was partly rooted in seasonal affective disorder, which, if you don't know, is when in like the winter, when you have less sunlight, less vitamin D, and there's more kind of gray oppression in the world around you that has an impact on your mind and on your emotions. So anyway, that was kind of the beginning of how long was it? It was probably 2014 before I really felt like I was in a place of health again. So, you know, a number of years. And a lot of this book was working through that, or giving voice to, metaphorical voice to what I was experiencing in my own heart and mind. And so the idea of the book really was, if not born out of that, sincerely influenced by that experience that for me was really connected to the darkness and the winter and the gray. And I started to associate sunlight and light with hope and with health and with happiness. So yeah.
And it's a quest.
It is a quest. Yeah. Yeah. So it's been a number of years now since that was something that I felt crippled by. But I would say every, November, December, I pull out, I have a sun lamp that I get out and I sit in front of at least, an hour a day. So I have a lot more sort of preemptive coping mechanisms now. And I think it's better for other reasons as well. But that was a real difficulty for a number of years for me. And I think, so I work with high school girls at my church, and in the last 4 years, I bet we've had 6 or 7 girls who have been clinically anxious or depressed, and half as many have been suicidal. And that's like a really normal part of the modern teenage life right now. And so I think so much of my desire with this book and with sort of my, I guess, interaction with teenagers is to just emphasize that that's not like, it's not something to be ashamed of. It's not something that you need to feel like is your problem to fix. It's something that like, you're responsible to get help for, but in the same way that you wouldn't feel guilty about getting cancer, you don't need to feel guilty about being depressed. And so, yeah, I think for me, it was, in addition to being a difficult thing to work through, it was an eye opener, because previous to that, I think I had thought like, I don't know, it's just people who can't pull themselves up or whatever. So
I appreciate your powerful words around all of that so much. As a mother of a teenage boy, not girl, but I listen to my son sometimes talk to me, especially the girls that are in his life friendship circle. I mean, and boys too, but the girls, especially, some of the things that they're dealing with just on a daily basis is it's so hard. And I appreciate your giving voice to that, both your voice of your personal experience, but also, like you said, something that can reach more people and really provide some encouragement. I think that's beautiful. I really do. And I think you're right about, like, I think what you said is so good about about cancer, because I do think, even though I do know that our approach to mental health is better than it was, there still is a social stigma around. When people get an illness like cancer or something, we rally around them in a much different way than we do if they have. And I have never experienced a panic attack like you're talking about, but I have people in my life who've gone through that, and it is debilitating, and it is frightening, and it is very real. And I know there's people that have gone to the hospital that I know thinking something is physically in their heart, because it just feels like their heart is pounding out of their chest. And then to feel like, not only is that not what's wrong, but instead it's like in my head, which is not what I meant, but and I think there's just a stigma around that. And I really do applaud you for the encouragement that you're offering. Talk to me a little bit about your dad too, because how did your dad's illness overlap your own health issues?
So my dad was diagnosed with a really rare blood cancer when I was in 9th grade. So I was 15.
Okay.
And he lasted 15 years. So he died right before I turned 30 September 1st of September 2nd of 2015. And so that would have been like kind of toward the tail end of my most heavy mental illness stuff. It was the same year that I signed with my agent as well, after, a lot of years of trying. And so that was like, it was one of those really hard collisions of a lot of things. And I'm so grateful that the mental illness for me happened before he died, because he was one of my lifelines, I think, in that time. And he was always, kind of my favorite person in the world. We were always really good friends, and his kind of approach to life was really rooted in humor. And
he was a creative too, wasn't he?
He was.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. He had his own business and painted tile. But throughout the experience that I had with anxiety and depression, he was just one of those sort of people that kept my head above the water. And so when he died, I was like, had just started my first round of real hard revisions with my editor, or with my agent, excuse me. And so I was like sort of halted for a while. I don't know if you've experienced this before, and anyone else who's dealt with grief and loss, but when someone you love dies, it, like, for me, it strangled a lot of my creative energy. Well, kind of all of my energy in general. But I didn't have anything to give to a lot of stuff. I also didn't have a lot of like mental presence. It just sort of like, it clouds you up, and keeps you from being productive. It keeps you from being creative and all of the things that you want to be.
Which can add to that spiral, can it not? Yeah, when you're already grieving a significant loss, and you struggle anyway to stay above something, and then you feel like, now I'm not even like maybe meeting deadlines or making progress or whatever, then that can just add to that. And it's heavy. It is
heavy. And I was so fortunate to have a beautiful community around me that supported me in like every possible way. I remember coming home to my apartment from one of the really long days at the hospital before Dad died, and some of my friends had bought me groceries, and they were just sitting on my dining room table, and you know, people paid my rent, people helped with the bills. Like, it was amazing what people did to help in that time. But yeah, I think, like, you know, life doesn't stop. And so, you know, you still have a phone bill and an electric bill and groceries to buy. You still have to feed yourself. You know, you still have to do all the same things, even though to you the world has ended. And so I think, like, I can't imagine doing that without a support system. So it was a time of very low productivity for me. But
I in 10 years ago, my family was in a head-on car crash, and there was 4 of us, and we were all injured. We had it was a very difficult season, is what I'm trying to say. And I have said what you're saying, and that is, like, on one hand, I wouldn't wish anyone else to go through that because it was really difficult. But on the other hand, because of the support, the way that people rally, like, I wish everyone could experience that, though, because there's something about that helps me on days that I don't even know it's that. Like, it's just this, that's just the reminder, one, that people care, but also that people see when you're hurting, you know, and they want to they can't fix it. And it also, I think experiencing that has made me a better servant to people when they're struggling, because I know I can't fix it. I know I can't say the right thing. I know I can't, but sometimes just being present, putting groceries on your, even if they didn't pick out the cereal that you would have picked out, I don't know that matters, right? It's just like, you came home and you're like, oh, I'm sure there was something there you wanted to eat, you know? So, and to just try to be present for people. I think it's just a very valuable lesson. So, one of the things that you list, I'm going to switch gears just a little bit because I'm watching our time and we're going to wrap up, fortunately. One of the things that you listed was just one of your favorite things is hymns. And I just wondered, kind of as we're wrapping up a little bit, how does hearing or singing or listening to, however, I don't know how they're in your life, but how does that refresh you? Why is that what is something that you would call one of your favorite things?
For sure. I think the language for me is the main thing that I love about hymns. I grew up in early 2000s and, you know, late 90s church, which was kind of the rise of what my dad would call rock and roll church, the kind of just more modern worship music. And I think now as an adult, while I definitely see the value of modern worship music, there's something that's just way more powerful to me about having 4 or 5 stanzas that are, every word is like jam-packed with meaning and punch. You know, I understand the value of kind of repeating a refrain and you know, having time to meditate, but some of the old hymns are just, I mean, every time I sing them, I cry. And I think it's because there's the language is, and that's why I write too, because I love language and I love what it can do. When you use it well, you can say so much more than the words themselves, you know? And so I think language for me is what I love about hymns.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite hymn or two?
I have
put you on the spot. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
And there's 3 that we sang in our wedding. Great is thy faithfulness, how great thou art, and be thou my vision are my probably 3
Be thou my vision. We used at our wedding too. So I'm right there. Yeah. I love great is thy faithfulness. And I also love come thou fount of every blessing. And even saying those words, like I'm totally with you. It's like those aren't words that we say all the time now, but they're just they move me to tears also. And I love modern music. I love contemporary. I have that on all the time, you know, and stuff. And I love it. But I agree with you. There's something about those words when you especially I think when you have walked a dark place and that they're infused with hope, those songs. And so are the modern ones. I don't know. Yes, but I'm with you. I just love them. I have them on a lot too. So Pam has put another comment in, and it's a great segue for kind of wrapping up, because she says, Hannah has been drinking from a beautiful mug that she painted. She's a creative, just like her dad, Jerry. And I know you also have an Etsy shop. So show off the mug. I know you were showing us your paintings in the back there of your heroines that you love, but
so this is one of my actually sublimation designs. I have a printer that I can print, like reprint an image that I've painted. This is an Aslan mug.
Sublimation, what does that mean?
Yeah, it's like it's a way of heat
okay.
something.
Okay.
It's like a press.
Okay.
In this case, it's for mugs, and I don't even know what the word sublimate means. But
okay, that's good. That's fine. That's good enough.
The hand painted ones are. They have a little more texture. I don't know if you can see, but they this is a metallic paint that I'm able to use. And these are all, you know, I have to paint the whole thing every time I do one.
Okay.
So they're a little more interesting to look at because of the shapes and colors and things. But yeah, my Etsy shop is a long one. And I think it will probably be linked. It's Ophelia's Gypsy Caravan.etsy.com. I didn't think it through when I made up the name that I'd have to be giving it out to people. So Ophelia was my dog, who actually died in January.
I'm sorry.
My girl for 12 years and the name of my business. So.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I will definitely link the Etsy shop. And the website is hannachoward.com, right?
Yep.
And you can get this book, Ignite the Sun, wherever books are sold. Do you have some place in particular you'd like to send people if they're buying the book?
Sure.
I know. Yeah.
My local indie is Magic City Books.
Okay.
And if you order this week, you can get a signed and personalized copy.
Wonderful. Okay. Order the Magic City Books. I'll look up that website and I'll link that too. I'll put all that stuff in the comments. And if you're listening later, it'll be in the show notes. And where else are you? Where else can we follow you, or is everything linked from your website, or where else do you want to send people?
Yeah. Everything is on my website, but the place that I'm most active would be Instagram.
Okay.
Hanna C Howard.
Okay.
And that same handle on Twitter. I try to be better at Twitter, but I'm not always very good at it.
Twitter's a little snarky for me.
It is.
I don't know.
It is snarky. Yep.
I'm like, oh, I'm not snarky. Well, I mean, I can be. Don't get me wrong.
It's either funny or angry.
Yes. And I'm, yeah.
And I have a Facebook page, but I have not been very good about using it. It's
okay.
Hanna C Howard author. So.
Okay. And so Instagram is kind of your hangout place on social media then. Yeah. Okay. All right. Awesome. Debbie Patrick says, I'm excited to look at your Etsy shop. So that would be great. Yeah. And I will definitely link all these things. And Hanna, you are delightful. And we just cannot be more excited for you and this week. And thank you so much for spending a little bit of time of your launch week with us.
Thank you for
all the best to you. Yeah. We're going to sign off now. All right. Peace. I hope you enjoyed learning from Hanna as much as I did. She is such an example of a ray of sunshine. Hanna's website and Etsy shop are linked in today's show notes. I encourage you to find and follow her. Thank you so much for listening. I pray that wherever your day takes you, you are walking in the confident knowledge that you are a beloved, cherished child of God. Peace.